Welcome to the Evergreen RX, your prescription for living well. Here, we're all about self-exploration, intentionality, and working with our mind, body, and soul for healing and growth. I'm your host, Hayden. I'm in my 20s and in search of connection, fulfillment, and ways to make sense of the world. If you're down, join me as I explore tools to bridge the gap between external reality and our deep inner worlds, discovering our own prescriptions for health, wholeness, and expansion. Hello, welcome back to the Evergreen RX. I'm Hayden, your host. I'm a licensed professional counselor associate since I finished up grad school about 6 months ago, and I'm getting my hours to be a full licensed therapist. But thanks for joining. Thanks for clicking today's episode where we're going to be talking about values. So at least for me, I'll be fair, I chose this topic, but it sounds a little bit dry or boring. I don't know, I just feel like conversations we've ever had about values is usually not the most intriguing. But I promise you guys, well, at least in my opinion, this is a little bit more interesting. It's actually really applicable to your life and to overall well-being and definitely satisfaction and fulfillment. Values are basically just like a compass, kind of words that you can anchor into and define what they mean for you and then how they play out in your life. So there's some real immediate changes even that can be made once you determine what your values are and see whether they're being, met by the way your life is now or not. So I'll try my best to not make it too dry. I'm definitely switching things up. I want to go a little more off the cuff today. Not that I have ever had a script necessarily before. That's probably pretty obvious if you've listened to other episodes, but I think, so far this whole process of starting a podcast has been a real workshop for me on a personal level. A lot of limiting beliefs and insecurities that I have come up and have needed, some healing and attention, but also just kind of workshopping how I best connect and what it is that I want to add to the wellness space. Because I don't know about you guys, but recently, man, I have been a little bit burnt out on how much wellness info is out there and how it just seems to become, your whole world if you are interested in personal growth. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly how I want to contribute to that conversation and how I maybe want to mix things up a little bit. So anyway, let's just start off with the first time I was exposed to the idea of values, I guess. I mean, obviously, as a kid growing up, we learn, you should be kind and polite, caring. There's some values that I think most people try to instill in young children through school or through religion, whatever it may be. But the first time I really remember having an impactful discussion about values was when I was in a girls group therapy. When I was 15, I went to group therapy because I was working through some issues. As a 15-year-old girl, it's not easy. This group was based off of Brene Brown's work. There was it had creative components. There was this whole workbook that went along with it. And one of the assignments that we did was figuring out our values. It was from what I remember, an image of a lantern, and you had values that were kind of surrounding the flame, and then there was a core value that was the flame, the thing that you could say it's maybe your purpose or one of the reasons that you're here or what is most dear to you. And that was when I discovered that my top value is connection, and that I think opened my eyes to a lot of the things that were hurting me and why they were hurting me. The troubles that I had with friendships, they were super painful. And that can be for a lot of reasons. I think I'm also, sensitive and empathic in that way, but it's also, I valued connection. I value it so deeply that when it feels like there is a break in that, or I'm not, I don't feel connected to others in my life in a meaningful way, it causes me a lot of problems. And so, even having identified that at 15, now, starting this podcast, I knew connection was top for me and why I wanted to do it, building a community, talking with other people that are like-minded and giving everybody a space to share and to explore together, because of that being a core value of mine, creating that connection, creating that community, selfishly because it makes me feel really good, and also because I think it's one of the things that I'm here to contribute. So that was my first exposure, and fast forward to now with my job, my boss actually, the way that I met her and found out about the place that I work is because she came and spoke to a class of mine about values and about their therapeutic benefit. She has, a really amazing viewpoint that sometimes, when people come in with symptoms of depression or anxiety, just a general lack of energy, lack of kind of zest for life, or just feeling down, a lot of the reasons why people search out a therapist in the first place can be rooted in not knowing their values and not having them be forefront in their life. And then that just causes like a drain on our energy and makes us feel really unfulfilled. And yeah, so she came and talked about that, and I was like, dang, this is like a really cool idea, and I want to learn more about this. And now I'm at a point where I talk to basically all of my clients about what they value. Things like astrology and Myers-Briggs and just personality tests in general kind of help give us a map to why it is that we do what we do, what the kind of motivators behind our behavior are. And I really see values as no different. So whether you believe you were born into this life with a certain set of values and a path, and you feel like it has a spiritual connection, or you just believe that because of genes and your environment and the way that you grew up, that you cultivate certain types of values, either way you slice it, the things that we value still are driving forces behind the way that we act, the career that we choose, the partners that we choose, how we spend our money. Any of those decisions that we make are rooted in some kind of internal guidance system. What's cool about values that makes them a little bit different from astrology or other personality trait kind of identities is that they usually are a lot more intuitive to understand. You don't have to do a lot of studying to know what different values mean and to even know which ones resonate with you. It's really kind of like a gut thing. And it's one of those things that we get to decide for ourselves, which I think is really empowering and kind of an exciting process, especially when you're in your 20s, to look at like, okay, so maybe growing up I was taught to think this one way, or I always felt like, my family valued this, so I value this. But being able to open up the conversation now to like, what is it that actually comes from me? What is it that's unique to me that drives me? Maybe some of them align with how you were raised and maybe some of them don't. And that can be really exciting to figure out and to figure out what that looks like in your life moving forward. So like I said, I really believe that we have certain qualities inside of us that become these drivers of behavior. But a lot of times, these things can be unconscious. So, something might be bothering you and you're just really not sure why. Maybe you have a coworker that shows up 5 minutes late to work every day and it just gets under your skin and you don't know why. Well, possibly you value conscientiousness or responsibility. Maybe you even value respect, so you deem that as something that's disrespectful. When we start to uncover these things, boom, we have opened up a whole new path to understanding our behavior, understanding even some of our triggers, and, what's working for us in relationships or not. So, for an example, me and my boyfriend like to play games together. If I'm looking from a values perspective, I would say I probably like to play games because I value the connection and spending time with him. And I also really value curiosity. So learning a new game, especially games where you learn about the other person that you're playing with, I find really fun and engaging. Him, on the other hand, I haven't asked him, so I am just assuming, but I would say he probably values creativity and play. And that's what he likes about playing games. So we both have our own driving forces behind that behavior, but luckily, we have a shared activity that gets kind of both of our desires met. That's awesome. And that's fun to understand. But I think the real juice with having a values mindset and something like a partnership is to have something to turn to when things aren't really clicking. If you're just really not matching with each other or being able to find common ground, there might be some values mismatch that's happening. This extends even to romance and intimacy. There's this great book called Coming Together that I'll link down below, where they talk about core desires, which is basically another word for values, maybe just with a few more tailored to intimacy. But they say that if you don't understand what your core desire is with your partner, then you guys might just be completely missing the boat, and that's why one person feels satisfied and the other doesn't, or neither person does, because you don't really know what desire or value it is that you are trying to meet through your actions. Actions are just the behavioral and external way that we try to fulfill internal drives and needs. So I also mentioned in last episode 7 on decision fatigue, how it can be really hard to know how to make choices when you don't have like a strong sense of that internal compass. And I really do believe in a large part our internal compass comes down to the things that we value. Obviously, like, this is so much more complicated, and part of my brain is like, oh my God, talk about astrology, which maybe I'll do an episode on that later if you're interested. But when I think about kind of like the image of like a house, if our well-being, if our mental health and kind of contentment with life and everything was this house, I can see pretty clearly that values would be like the bedrock. It would be the foundation, because a lot of things can play into why we value what we value, but not understanding what those things are, I think causes a lot more like kind of strife and instability than some of the other components that we might include in our wellness journey or in our kind of self-definition or understanding. We can do the exact same behaviors from different places, and it's not so much really about the results, but about understanding why you're choosing what you are. And when things start to kind of fall off the tracks or feel a little out of whack or unsatisfying, then you have something to kind of reference or look back to think, okay, maybe where are things getting off? Where am I not feeling in line with my values? And how is that impacting, my mood and my mental health? Because it really does have a big impact. I gravitated towards my boss and what she said about this stuff for a reason, because it makes kind of intuitive sense. And when you start to even look at it in your own life, you can notice really positive changes, even just from an intentions place. I think we can look at situations that maybe the situation itself doesn't change at all, but our intentions and our mindset behind it does, and it can totally change things around. So I guess I'm curious for you, do you know your values? Not the ones that were put on us through religion or family or school, maybe because of what our peers valued, but really, have you looked at things since you've become an adult and figured out what it is that's most important to you? I know for myself, like going through a list of a bunch of values and their definitions, which I will put one below as well for you if you're interested. But that can be kind of intimidating, because it's like, it's all good stuff. It's like, yeah, of course I value honesty and I value kindness, but I also value self-growth and determination. Like, all of them are great. But really figuring out the ones that resonate with you can be kind of an intimidating process, because that also means that like some of them we have to like put lower on the list. Maybe it's like you've been taught that being kind is king and that's the best, that's all you should ever do. But there might be some other values that are more important to you. And that's okay. Like, that doesn't mean that you're not a kind person or you don't understand why that is important. But just really having like an honest appraisal, I think this is another one of those steps in just our self-development on like really understanding who we are at our core, so that we become more unshakable and more of this like pillar of security and strength when we have a better, deeper understanding of what makes us tick and how we define ourselves. I know recently I've been struggling, and I'll talk more about this probably in the future because the podcast has brought this up for me a lot, on like knowing who I am and how I come across, and like the person I want to be, and am I being that person? Am I living out those values? That's, been very hard to contend with. And part of that I think has been hard. It's because like I can't be everything to everybody. And so when we decide our values, we kind of do decide what it is that we are. So kind of on this same line is like when you look at your list of values, if you go after this and you highlight all your top values and you narrow it down to a list of like 5 or 10, and you look at that list, what picture does that paint? What image do you get of who you are and what you offer to the world? For me, like I said, connection, curiosity, kindness, self-growth, an appreciation of beauty. Those are some top values for me. And when I look at that, I'm like, okay, I can see I'm like a warm person. I value interpersonal relationships. And my top values is also like intimacy. I like deep, meaningful connections. So it starts to paint a picture like, okay, I'm connected with my heart in the way that I move throughout the world. And it gives like a different flavor and color than, say, a friend that values excitement, power, courage, education, all those things. Wonderful values, and that paints a different picture. Like, doesn't it give you kind of a different vibe? At least for me, it's like different colors. Like maybe I'm more of like a soft purple or blue, and that other person is like a vibrant red. It just helps us own our individuality and our own color makeup and energy that we bring to the world. And so it's kind of cool to see that and just get a sense of, what your flavor is that you bring to the table. I think defining your values for yourself is also another really good opportunity for, practicing that intuition and trust. Like I said, every value is good, and we are all like a complex mix of a bit of everything, but do have cores. It's almost like in Inside Out, that Disney movie about emotions. She has like those different islands in her brain, and like some of them as she's growing up crumble. I mean, it's like devastating. Like her like play island or something like crumbles when she is getting older, but it's almost like imagining our values as a part of those islands of like we all have core pillars within ourselves. So practicing the trust and leaning on your intuition, which you can hear more about in a past episode, I think episode 2, but just seeing what jumps out at you, what do you resonate with, and what feels really good or really exciting when you say, I value blank. This is me. This is important to me. How does that feel for you? And if it lights you up a little bit, then that's a really good sign that it matters. So say you're at the point where you got your whole list, you got your 5 to 10, you know your values, and you're like, all right, Hayden, what now? You said that this was going to help with me feeling fulfilled. So something that I did is create kind of like a checklist or a check-in sheet for my values. So I chose to make some questions that connected with one or a couple of my values. So one of my questions is, where's the good? So that connects to something else for me, which is gratitude. So for me, that being one of my questions, I can sit down and really check in, like, am I looking at the good? Have I noticed recently what is going right in my life? Another one of my questions is, what can I take, leave, or change? That goes along with what I value with self-development, taking stock of where I'm at. So these questions just kind of help me check in and get like a little bit of a thought process going on maybe areas that I can improve or some things that I'm missing. I also find contribution really important. I see some of that value being met through sharing my experience, my knowledge through a podcast, but also volunteering. And so I try to periodically check in and see what it is that I can maybe do or ways that I can give back. You can also just post them around, maybe post little reminders or on your desk, have like a list of the things that you value, or on your phone case or your lock screen. If you want, just continual reminders, even just when you're brushing your teeth in the morning, if you want to start off your morning by really reconnecting to what your bigger picture is in life and what you hope to do with your time on earth. I think that can be a great idea. I think it also helps to kind of check in on, like, are they in balance? Is one kind of taking the reins and some of your other ones are not getting as much attention? Is there a way that you would like to rebalance? And lastly, I think the hardest thing, but probably the most impactful, is making changes based off of what you learn. So, this can be career changes, relationship changes, people that you have in your life, the way that you show up in those relationships, what you do with your money, what you do with your time. If you super value travel, but you haven't taken a vacation in 2 years, it's time to make that change. Figure out a way to take the time off. Maybe set aside a travel fund and put money towards that each month. Really making the actions. I think sometimes I get caught up in this sense of kind of just ruminating and understanding myself better and having a lot of thoughts and feelings about things, and kind of undermining a little bit how important behavioral changes, because to me that just reminds me of early psychology therapeutic approaches and you can just change your behaviors and change your life. But they do actually have a really important role. There's a reason we kind of started there, because it can make a difference. There's this concept of behavioral activation, which can help a lot with depression, which is basically you kind of got to start doing the thing that you least want to do, because it will begin to make you feel better, and then it will become easier to do that thing. But it's hard because it's sometimes we don't want to make that change, or it feels really daunting. But to feel better and to feel more fulfilled, we kind of have to start one day to just take action on it. I think another way you can even implement these things is in kind of fun avenues is your decor or your clothes. How do they reflect who you are as a person? If you could take a look around my house right now, you probably think, okay, this girl likes to be organized and to have her space be clean. And it's yeah, that is really important to me. And that is reflected in my space for sure. If it was chaotic, for me, I would not be able to, I think, reach my full potential because I would be so caught up in that. But other people, they're not as bothered. So who cares? But I just think it's a fun way to start looking at all of the different areas in your life that you can really take the big picture and these meaningful driving forces, understanding who you are, and boil them down even into small bits to just infuse your life in every avenue with what brings you meaning and purpose, which is so cool. It's kind of fun. The more you surround yourself and just completely mold your life around what is held most deeply to you, be my educated guess, that the better you'd feel. So that's just a quick and dirty on values. Maybe it got you thinking a little bit more or in a different way about this topic. And I would love to know your values and what you learned from this. So please share it on Instagram or share it. I think there's like some poll on Spotify that you can answer, because I would love to hear that. But it is time for the dose, and I'm actually changing up the dose a little bit, because even though I know that my podcast title has the word prescription, basically RX, in it, I don't like how things with the dose are feeling a little bit too prescriptive or homeworky. Maybe that's not something that you noticed or bothered you, but I kind of want to make the dose a little bit more of like a recap or like a quick touch-in. Like if you were impacted by this episode and a few months down the road you kind of want to reconnect to what you learned, but you maybe don't want to have to listen to the whole thing over again or whatever, I kind of want the dose to be more of like spark notes of the information, so that you can take what works for you and you can continue building up your own prescription for well-being, your own approach to life, because I always want that to feel like customizable and unique, and really center on how important it is for you to define for yourself what it looks like. And I don't know, I didn't love that it felt like I was telling you what to do, because I don't know what to do either. So the dose is that our values help provide a compass from the big picture to the small everyday decisions. When you're feeling out of alignment or out of whack, check in with your values and reconnect to your why. And hopefully it'll bring you a greater sense of peace or fulfillment. Yeah, thanks for kind of rolling with some of the, I would call them more micro changes that I'm making, but I'm just really excited to continue to see how this podcast evolves and grows with me and with you, whoever's listening. And I'm so grateful for you being here, and I'm so excited for you figuring out your flavor, your color, the specific energy that you bring to the world through what you value and who you are. And until next time, I wish you the best.